Have you ever been judged unfairly without anyone knowing your full story? When a professor publicly humiliated and kicked Marcus out of class for being late, little did he know the student was working 3 jobs to pay for his education. What happens when a brilliant black engineering student finally has his moment of vindication against an elitist professor with deep-seated prejudices? Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Marcus Johnson sprinted across campus, his worn backpack bouncing against his shoulder blades. The morning sun beat down on his face as sweat beaded on his forehead. He checked his watch, 8:07 a.m. Professor Harrington's Advanced Engineering Principles class had started 7 minutes ago. Not again, Marcus muttered, pushing his tired body to move faster. He'd finished his night shift at the warehouse at 4 a.m., caught 3 hours of fitful sleep, and his bus had been late. Now he was racing against the clock. The engineering building loomed ahead, its modern glass facade reflecting the morning light. Marcus took the stairs 2 at a time, his muscles aching in protest. He hadn't even had time for coffee. Outside room 305, Marcus paused to catch his breath. He could hear Professor Harrington's crisp, authoritative voice through the door. Taking a deep breath, he turned the handle and stepped inside. The lecture hall fell silent. 50 pairs of eyes turned to stare at him, but only one gaze mattered, the icy blue stare of Professor Richard Harrington, who stopped mid-sentence and slowly removed his glasses. "Mr. Johnson," Professor Harrington said, his voice dripping with disdain. "How nice of you to grace us with your presence." Marcus swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Professor. My bus was—" "I don't recall asking for excuses," Harrington cut him off. "This is the 3rd time this month. Some of us value punctuality as much as we value education." A few students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. In the second row, Zoe Taylor gave Marcus a sympathetic glance. "Take a seat, Mr. Johnson," Harrington said with a dismissive wave. "Though I wonder why you bother showing up at all if you can't manage to be on time." Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks as he made his way to an empty seat in the back row. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out his notebook. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, and exhaustion clouded his thoughts. Professor Harrington resumed his lecture, occasionally glancing toward Marcus with narrowed eyes. "As I was saying before we were interrupted, engineering excellence requires discipline above all else." Marcus took meticulous notes despite his fatigue. He couldn't afford to miss anything, his scholarship depended on maintaining his GPA. Every equation, every principle needed to be mastered. When class ended, Marcus gathered his things quickly, hoping to avoid further interaction with Harrington. "Mr. Johnson." The professor's voice stopped him in his tracks. "A moment, please." The other students filed out as Marcus approached the lectern. "This is a prestigious program," Harrington said, organizing his notes with manicured hands. "Your repeated tardiness suggests you might not be taking it seriously enough." "I am taking it seriously, sir," Marcus replied. Actions speak louder than words, Mr. Johnson. Some students would give anything for your spot in this program." Harrington's eyes flicked dismissively over Marcus's worn jeans and faded t-shirt. "Perhaps you should consider whether this is the right path for you." Marcus gripped the strap of his backpack tightly. "I understand, Professor. It won't happen again." As he left the building, Marcus checked his watch again. He had exactly 20 minutes to get across campus for his shift at the coffee shop. No time for breakfast. Again. The Busy Bean Cafe hummed with morning activity as Marcus tied his apron behind his back. The rich aroma of coffee filled the air, a cruel reminder of his empty stomach. "You look like hell," said Sophie, the manager, as she handed him his name tag. "Another late night?" Marcus managed a tired smile. "Just the usual." "Your usual would kill most people," Sophie replied, but there was admiration in her voice. "Register 2. I'll bring you a muffin when I get a chance. For the next 4 hours, Marcus worked on autopilot. Good morning, welcome to Busy Bean. What can I get started for you? His customer service voice revealed none of the exhaustion weighing down his body. Between orders, he reviewed engineering notes, propping his textbook beneath the counter. Professor Harrington's equations danced before his tired eyes. At 1 p.m., Marcus untied his apron, grabbed his backpack, and headed to his 1:30 class. No time for lunch. After class came his shift at the campus library, reshelving books and helping students with research questions until 8 p.m. Dinner was a protein bar eaten while walking to his night class. By the time he reached his small off-campus apartment at 10 p.m., Marcus wanted nothing more than sleep. Instead, he opened his laptop to complete an assignment for Harrington's class. His phone buzzed with a text. "How's my college boy doing?" His mother's message was accompanied by a photo of his 16-year-old sister Tiana winning a debate tournament. Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion. "Doing great, Mom. Tell Tiana congrats. Working hard." He didn't mention the 3 jobs. He didn't mention skipping meals to save money. He didn't mention Professor Harrington's warning. His family had enough to worry about back in Chicago. At midnight, Marcus's phone alarm reminded him to get ready for his warehouse job. 3 nights a week, from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., he loaded packages onto trucks. The pay was better for overnight shifts, and the schedule didn't conflict with classes. As he pulled on his work boots, Marcus calculated the hours until his next class with Professor Harrington. If the bus ran on time, if there was no traffic, if he could change quickly enough after his morning shift, maybe, just maybe, he could make it on time. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, bloodshot eyes, dark circles, shoulders already stooped with fatigue. 4 hours of sleep in the last 36 hours. Just 3 more years, he whispered to himself. You can do this. The warehouse was cold and cavernous when Marcus arrived. For the next 3 hours, he moved packages, his mind still working through Harrington's equations even as his body lifted and carried and stacked. When 4 a.m. came, his supervisor nodded approvingly. "Johnson, you're the hardest worker here. Ever think about going full-time? We could use someone like you on the management track." Marcus shook his head. "Thanks, but I'm focusing on school." "Engineering, right? Smart kid. Keep it up." If only Professor Harrington could see him now, Marcus thought. Would he still question his dedication? On Thursday morning, everything that could go wrong did. Marcus's ancient Toyota refused to start after his warehouse shift. He spent precious minutes trying to jump-start it before giving up and calling for an Uber he couldn't afford. Traffic crawled through campus as students and faculty arrived for morning classes. Marcus checked his watch repeatedly, anxiety building with each passing minute. Professor Harrington's warning echoed in his mind. By the time the Uber dropped him off, Marcus was already 12 minutes late. He ran toward the engineering building, his heart pounding against his ribs. When he pushed open the classroom door, Professor Harrington stopped mid-sentence. The lecture hall fell silent. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, acutely aware of his disheveled appearance, his warehouse uniform partially hidden under his jacket, dark circles prominent under his eyes. "Mr. Johnson," Professor Harrington's voice was quiet but carried throughout the silent room. "How predictable." "I'm sorry, Professor," Marcus said, still breathless from running. "My car wouldn't start and yet, somehow, every other student managed to arrive on time," Harrington interrupted, gesturing to the filled seats. "How curious." A few students looked down uncomfortably. In the second row, Zoe Taylor shifted in her seat. "Since you seem incapable of respecting my time and that of your fellow students," Harrington continued, his voice growing sharper, "perhaps you should remove yourself from my classroom until you can demonstrate the basic courtesy of punctuality." Marcus stood his ground. "Professor, I've completed all the assignments. My grade point." "Your grades are irrelevant if you cannot meet the basic expectations of professional conduct," Harrington cut him off. "This is not a community college, Mr. Johnson. This is Westridge University. We have standards. The words, community college, hung in the air like a slap. Several students gasped quietly. I'm here to learn, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. I've earned my place here. Professor Harrington's eyebrows rose. Have you? I sometimes wonder if our admissions department has prioritized certain demographics over merit. The implication was clear. A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the classroom. Zoe Taylor's hand shot up. Professor, that's completely inappropriate. I don't recall asking for commentary, Ms. Taylor, Harrington snapped. His attention returned to Marcus. Mr. Johnson, you have a choice. Either leave my classroom now, or I will be forced to call campus security to remove you for disrupting my lecture. Marcus stood frozen, disbelief and rage warring within him. The unfairness of it all threatened to overwhelm him. 3 jobs. 4 hours of sleep. Perfect grades despite everything. And now this. Professor, he started again, his voice lower. Security it is, then. Harrington reached for the classroom phone. Fine, Marcus said, his voice tight. I'll go. As he turned to leave, Harrington added, and don't bother returning until you can demonstrate the same commitment to excellence that your peers clearly possess. Marcus walked out, his footsteps echoing in the hallway. Behind him, he heard Zoe's voice raised in protest, quickly silenced by Harrington. Outside the building, Marcus sat heavily on a bench, his hands shaking with exhaustion and suppressed anger. He pulled out his phone to check his schedule. His shift at the coffee shop started in 30 minutes. No time to change out of his warehouse uniform. No time to eat. No time to process what had just happened. A shadow fell across him. He looked up to see Zoe Taylor standing there, her arms folded across her chest. That was bull, she said flatly. Complete and utter bull. Marcus shrugged, too tired to respond. He can't talk to students that way, Zoe continued, sitting beside him. You should report him. To who? Marcus asked bitterly. Harrington's been here 20 years. He's tenured. He's published. He's untouchable. Nobody's untouchable, Zoe insisted. What he said had racial undertones. The university has policies against that. Marcus stood, hefting his backpack. I don't have time to fight the system, Zoe. I have to get to work. Work? Now. We have thermodynamics in 3 hours. I'll be there, Marcus said. I have a job between classes. Actually, I have 3 jobs. Zoe's eyes widened. 3. How do you? I just do, Marcus cut her off. Look, I appreciate the concern, but I need this degree. I can't afford to make enemies of professors, no matter how unfair they are. As he walked away, Zoe called after him, this isn't over, Marcus. What he did wasn't right. Marcus didn't turn around. He checked his watch and quickened his pace. He was already late for his shift, and Sophie wouldn't understand why like she had before. Too many lates, and he'd lose the job. Too many jobs lost, and he'd lose his apartment. Too many setbacks, and he'd lose his dream. As he hurried across campus, Marcus felt something hardening inside him. Professor Harrington didn't know who he was dealing with. Marcus hadn't survived Chicago's South Side, hadn't worked 3 jobs, hadn't maintained a 3.9 GPA through sheer determination just to be dismissed by someone who had never faced a real struggle in his life. One way or another, he would prove himself. Not just to Harrington, but to everyone who had ever underestimated him. The campus library was silent at 11 p.m. Most students had returned to their dorms or apartments, but Marcus sat alone at a corner table, surrounded by textbooks and his laptop. This was his sanctuary, the 2 hours between his evening class and midnight, before he had to leave for his warehouse shift. Library closes in 30 minutes, the student worker announced, her voice echoing through the nearly empty building. Marcus nodded without looking up. His fingers flew across his keyboard as he completed Professor Harrington's latest problem set. The advanced engineering concepts that stumped many of his classmates came naturally to him. Numbers, equations, and physical principles aligned in his mind with an elegant clarity that even exhaustion couldn't dim. "Whoa," a voice said from behind him. "Is that the Harrington assignment? You're already on problem 12. Marcus turned to see Zoe standing there, clutching her own laptop. "Yeah," he said simply. "Just finishing up." Zoe pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "Do you mind? I'm stuck on problem 4, and tutoring hours ended at 9. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. What's giving you trouble?" For the next 20 minutes, he guided Zoe through the complex thermodynamic principles. His explanation was clear, methodical, breaking down Harrington's deliberately obtuse phrasing into comprehensible steps. "That makes perfect sense," Zoe said, staring at him with new respect. "You explain it better than Harrington does." Marcus shrugged. "It's not that complicated once you see the pattern." "For you, maybe," Zoe said, glancing at his nearly completed assignment. "You know, people say Harrington's problem sets are designed to be impossible. The average score last semester was 72%. What did you get on the last one?" Marcus asked. 85%. "I was top of the class," Zoe said proudly, then narrowed her eyes. "What about you?" Marcus looked away. "I did okay." Zoe reached across the table and turned his laptop to face her. She navigated to the course portal and gasped at what she saw. A perfect score. 100%. And the one before that, also 100%. "Marcus, no one gets perfect scores on Harrington's assignments." "I just understand the material," Marcus said uncomfortably. "This is incredible," Zoe continued, scrolling through his grades. "You're acing every class. You have a 3.9 GPA. She looked up at him. "And you're working 3 jobs." "I need to," Marcus said simply. "Scholarship only covers 60% of tuition. I've got housing, food, books, and I send money home when I can." "Does Harrington know any of this?" "Why would he care?" Marcus asked, taking his laptop back. "All he sees is a black kid who's late to class." "But if he knew you were actually a genius." "I'm not a genius," Marcus interrupted. "I just work hard." "Harder than anyone I've ever met," Zoe said softly. "You should talk to Dr. Wells, the department chair. She might be able to help with your situation." "What situation?" "I'm handling things." "You're working yourself to death," Zoe argued. "And Harrington is treating you unfairly." Marcus began packing his books. "I need these jobs. I need this degree. I can deal with one prejudiced professor." "You shouldn't have to," Zoe insisted. The library lights flickered, the 15-minute warning before closing. "I've got to go," Marcus said, zipping his backpack. "Warehouse shift starts at 1. "When do you sleep?" Zoe asked, genuinely concerned. Marcus gave her a tired smile. "I'll sleep when I graduate." As he walked through the darkened campus toward his apartment to change for work, Marcus replayed Zoe's words in his mind. He wasn't looking for special treatment. He'd never expected anything to be handed to him. From the south side of Chicago to Westridge University, he'd fought for every opportunity, every achievement. But for the first time, he wondered if there might be another way, if his situation, as Zoe called it, wasn't just the way things had to be. His phone buzzed with a notification from the university portal. Professor Harrington had posted the class rankings for the previous assignment. Marcus stopped walking and checked the results. There it was, at the top of the list, Johnson, Marcus, 100%. Even Professor Harrington couldn't deny his brilliance on paper. The call came during Marcus's shift at the coffee shop. His mother's voice trembled over the line. "Tiana collapsed at school," she said. "They're taking her to Chicago Memorial." Marcus's hand froze on the espresso machine. What happened? Is she okay? They think it's her asthma, but they're running tests. I'm on my way to the hospital now. I'm coming home, Marcus said immediately. No, baby. You have school. Tiana would be so upset if you missed anything because of her. Mom, she's my sister. I need to be there. Marcus Johnson, his mother's voice grew firm despite her worry. You stay right where you are. This degree is our family's future. Tiana knows it too. After extracting a promise that his mother would call with updates, Marcus hung up. He looked at his watch. Harrington's midterm exam started in 2 hours. He'd been studying for weeks, stealing moments between shifts to memorize formulas and work through practice problems. His manager, Sophie, touched his arm. Everything okay? My sister's in the hospital, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Back in Chicago. Sophie's face softened. Go. I'll cover your shift. I can't. I have an exam. Family comes first, Sophie insisted. Always. 30 minutes later, Marcus was throwing clothes into a duffel bag in his apartment when another call came. His mother's voice was relieved. It was an asthma attack, but they've got her stabilized. The doctor says she'll be fine, but they're keeping her overnight for observation. Are you sure? I can still come, I'm positive. She's already asking about her debate tournament next week. His mother paused. She'd be furious if you missed that big test you mentioned. Marcus looked at his watch. If he left now, he could make the exam. Tell her I love her. I'll call tonight after my shift. He made it to campus with 15 minutes to spare, his heart still racing from worry about Tiana. Outside the lecture hall, students huddled in groups, frantically quizzing each other on thermodynamic principles. When Professor Harrington arrived, he surveyed the anxious students with cold satisfaction. This examination will separate those with true engineering potential from those who should perhaps consider other career paths. The exam was brutal. Complex problems, trick questions, time pressure, Harrington's trademark combination designed to break students. But Marcus worked steadily through each problem, his mind finding the patterns, applying the principles. With 10 minutes remaining, his phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from his mother, "Doctor wants to run more tests." Tiana's oxygen levels dropping again. Marcus's concentration shattered. His sister needed more tests. What if it wasn't just asthma? What if, "Time's up," Harrington announced. "Pass your exams forward." Marcus looked down at his paper. The last problem was only half completed. For the first time in Professor Harrington's class, he hadn't finished an exam. "Mr. Johnson," Harrington said as Marcus handed in his paper. "Not quite up to your usual standard, I see." Marcus opened his mouth to explain about Tiana, but stopped himself. Harrington had made it clear that he considered excuses beneath contempt. "I need to request an extension on tomorrow's assignment," Marcus said instead. "A family emergency has come up." Harrington's lips thinned. "Extensions are for those who plan poorly, Mr. Johnson. The due date has been on the syllabus since the first day of class." "My sister is in the hospital," Marcus said, his voice tight. "And I'm supposed to take your word for that?" Harrington raised an eyebrow. "Everyone has emergencies when deadlines approach." "The answer is no." Marcus felt something snap inside him. "You know what? Keep your extension. I'll turn in the assignment on time, and it will be perfect, just like all the others." Harrington's eyes narrowed. "Mind your tone, Mr. Johnson. Being a scholarship student doesn't entitle you to special treatment." "I've never asked for special treatment," Marcus fired back. "Despite what you seem to think, I've earned my place here." "That remains to be seen," Harrington said coldly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, some of us have important research to attend to." As Marcus watched him walk away, Zoe appeared at his side. "What was that about?" "My sister's in the hospital, and Harrington won't give me an extension." Zoe's face hardened. That's it. You're talking to Dr. Wells. Today. I don't have time. I need to pick up an extra shift to pay for a plane ticket to Chicago this weekend. Marcus, you're at the breaking point, Zoe said. Something has to give, and it doesn't have to be you. Dr. Diana Wells's office was nothing like Harrington's sterile, intimidating space. Bookshelves overflowed with engineering texts and framed photos of construction projects. A half-built robot sat on a workbench in the corner. The walls displayed not just academic achievements but newspaper clippings about community engineering projects. Mr. Johnson, she said, rising from her desk to shake his hand. I've been hoping to meet you. Your work in Professor Chen's structural analysis class was exceptional. Marcus shifted uncomfortably under her warm gaze. Thank you, Dr. Wells. Please, sit down, she gestured to a chair. Ms. Taylor seemed quite insistent that we speak. Zoe had practically marched him to the department chair's office, refusing to take no for an answer. Now she sat beside him, determined. Dr. Wells, Zoe began, Marcus is being treated unfairly by Professor Harrington. He needs to know what's happening. Dr. Wells folded her hands on her desk. I've heard rumors of incidents in Professor Harrington's class. Would you care to elaborate, Mr. Johnson? Marcus hesitated. Years of keeping his head down, of handling problems on his own, made speaking up feel foreign. Marcus has the highest grades in Harrington's class, Zoe jumped in. Perfect scores on impossible assignments. But Harrington kicked him out for being late. Is this true? Dr. Wells asked, turning to Marcus. Slowly, Marcus nodded. I have been late a few times. I work 3 jobs to pay for school, and sometimes my shifts run over or my car breaks down. 3 jobs. Dr. Wells repeated, her eyebrows rising. And you're maintaining a 3.9 GPA? Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. I work at the Busy Bean Cafe in the mornings, the campus library evenings, and the UPS warehouse 3 nights a week. Dr. Wells was silent for a moment, studying him. And when do you sleep, Mr. Johnson? The question, asked with genuine concern rather than accusation, caught Marcus off guard. When I can. 4 hours most nights. That's not sustainable, Dr. Wells said gently. Why haven't you applied for additional financial aid? I've maxed out my federal loans and grants, Marcus explained. My scholarship covers most tuition, but there's still housing, books, food, and I send money to my mom and sister in Chicago when I can. Dr. Wells made a note on her pad. And Professor Harrington is aware of your circumstances? No, Marcus admitted. He doesn't seem interested in explanations. Dr. Wells's expression darkened. Professor Harrington made a comment about demographics over merit, Zoe added. Everyone heard it. I see, Dr. Wells said, her voice cooling several degrees. Unfortunately, this isn't the first complaint of this nature I've received. She turned back to Marcus. Your academic record is remarkable, Mr. Johnson. Not just passing classes, but excelling under extraordinary circumstances. I'm not looking for special treatment, Marcus said quickly. I just want to be judged on my work, not on my punctuality. A reasonable request, Dr. Wells agreed. I'd like to speak with Professor Harrington about this matter. Marcus tensed. I don't want to make trouble. Standing up for yourself isn't making trouble, Dr. Wells said firmly. And if Richard Harrington is bringing his personal biases into the classroom, that's a matter I take very seriously. She made another note. In the meantime, I'd like you to consider applying for the Montgomery Engineering Scholarship. It provides a full ride plus a stipend for exceptional students with financial need. The deadline is next week. I've never heard of it, Marcus said. Few have. It's a new endowment, and the committee is looking for precisely the kind of dedication and talent you've demonstrated. She smiled. I happen to chair that committee. For the first time in months, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Thank you, Dr. Wells. Don't thank me yet, she replied, standing. First, I need to have a conversation with Professor Harrington. As Marcus and Zoe left her office, Dr. Wells called after them. Mr. Johnson. Your sister, is she all right? Marcus was surprised she remembered that detail from their conversation. She's stable. Thank you for asking. Family comes first, Dr. Wells said simply. Remember that. Walking across campus, Marcus felt lighter somehow. Someone in authority had listened. Someone had seen his struggle and recognized his worth. Told you, Zoe said, nudging his shoulder. Nobody's untouchable. Harrington still is, Marcus cautioned. He's tenured. The worst Dr. Wells can do is give him a talking to. Maybe, Zoe admitted. But you're not alone in this fight anymore. That night, as Marcus stocked shelves in the library, he allowed himself to imagine a life with just one job. With enough sleep. With time to actually enjoy learning instead of just racing to keep up. It seemed an impossible luxury. But for the first time, it felt like it might be within reach. The engineering department buzzed with excitement when Dean Foster announced the prestigious Westridge Innovation Competition. Each year, the university selected a team to represent them at the national level, with substantial scholarship money and industry connections at stake. This opportunity comes once in your academic career, Dean Foster explained to the packed auditorium. The university's reputation rides on your innovation. Marcus sat in the back row, calculating how many warehouse shifts he'd need to work to visit Tiana this weekend. Her condition had stabilized, but the hospital bills were mounting. His mother hadn't said anything, but he knew she was worried. Professor Harrington will select our university team, Dean Foster continued. 5 exceptional students who exemplify Westridge excellence. Marcus's attention snapped back to the stage. Harrington would be choosing the team. His chances had just plummeted to 0. Sure enough, when the team announcement came 2 days later, the selected students were all from Harrington's inner circle, wealthy legacy students whose families had buildings named after them on campus. Surprised? Zoe asked, finding Marcus in the library during his shift. Alexander Thompson has never earned above AB+ in any engineering class, but his father donated the new physics lab. Marcus shelved a book with more force than necessary. It doesn't matter. I don't have time for extracurriculars anyway. This isn't an extracurricular, Zoe argued. This is a career-making opportunity. And you're 10 times the engineer any of those trust fund kids are. Marcus sighed. Maybe next year. You don't get it, Zoe said, following him down the aisle. Harrington's team is working on smart grid optimization for urban environments. That's literally what your final project in Chen's class was about, the one Dr. Wells was so impressed by. Marcus stopped. How do you know what they're working on? I have sources, Zoe said with a small smile. The point is, you deserve to be on that team. Later that night, after his library shift but before heading to the warehouse, Marcus pulled up his final project from last semester. His design for an AI-optimized power grid for low-income urban neighborhoods had earned him the highest grade in the class. The project had been personal. Growing up in South Side Chicago meant experiencing frequent brownouts and power failures. Almost without conscious decision, Marcus began refining his design. If Harrington's team was tackling the same problem, he wanted to see how his solution compared. It wasn't about competition, it was about proving to himself that he belonged. Night after night, in the precious hours between jobs and classes, Marcus refined his model. He incorporated new research, optimized his algorithms, and added features addressing issues specific to underserved communities, elements he suspected Harrington's team might overlook. 2 weeks into the project, Dr. Wells found him asleep at a computer in the engineering lab, his simulation running. Mr. Johnson. She gently shook his shoulder. Marcus jerked awake. I'm sorry, Dr. Wells. I was just working on something remarkable, from what I can see. She studied his screen with growing interest. Is this what I think it is? Marcus rubbed his eyes. It's just a side project. This is far more than a side project, Dr. Wells said, scrolling through his code. This is a comprehensive solution for optimizing power distribution in urban environments with aging infrastructure. It's just an extension of my final project from last semester, Marcus said modestly. The very project I was hoping to discuss with you, Dr. Wells said. I'm on the Montgomery Scholarship Committee, remember? I've been reviewing your application. Marcus straightened. You have. Your academic record speaks for itself, but this. She gestured to the screen. This demonstrates innovative thinking that goes beyond classroom requirements. She studied him. Does Professor Harrington know about this work? Marcus shook his head. It's not for his class. Isn't this similar to the innovation competition project his team is working on? I suppose it is. Dr. Wells's expression was unreadable. Would you be willing to present this at next week's faculty showcase? Several industry partners will be attending, including the Montgomery Scholarship sponsors. Marcus hesitated. Professor Harrington will be there. Indeed he will, Dr. Wells said with a slight smile. All the more reason for your work to be seen. The annual faculty showcase transformed the engineering building's atrium into a professional exhibition space. Industry representatives, faculty, and top students mingled among displays highlighting Westridge's most promising research. Marcus stood beside his modest display, fighting exhaustion. He'd worked back-to-back shifts to free up this afternoon, running on coffee and determination. His presentation materials weren't as polished as the others, he couldn't afford professional printing, but his results spoke for themselves. Interesting approach, commented an older man examining Marcus's power grid simulation. Most students focus on efficiency for affluent areas with newer infrastructure. Those areas already have reliable power, Marcus explained. I grew up in a neighborhood where blackouts were normal during heat waves or storms. The man nodded. And your solution addresses that affordably. Very practical. As the man moved on, Marcus noticed Professor Harrington across the room, proudly showing off his team's project to Dean Foster and several well-dressed visitors. Their display was sleek and professional, with glossy handouts and a large touchscreen demo. Don't worry about them, Zoe said, appearing at his side. Substance beats style. In a perfect world, maybe, Marcus replied. Before Zoe could respond, a buzz swept through the atrium as Dr. Wells entered with a distinguished group of visitors. She led them methodically around the room, stopping at selected displays. She's bringing them here next, Zoe whispered excitedly. Those are the Montgomery Scholarship donors. Marcus straightened his tie, borrowed from his roommate, and took a deep breath. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Wells said warmly as she approached. I'd like you to meet Mr. James Montgomery and the Scholarship Committee. The older man who had commented on Marcus's project earlier stepped forward. We've already met, though I didn't introduce myself properly. James Montgomery. It's an honor, sir, Marcus said, shaking his hand. Diana tells me you're quite the exceptional student, Montgomery said. Would you mind explaining your project again for my colleagues? For the next 10 minutes, Marcus walked them through his design, answering technical questions with confidence born from intimate knowledge of his subject. When he finished, Montgomery nodded approvingly. Impressive work, young man. Especially considering you developed this while working 3 jobs. From the corner of his eye, Marcus saw Professor Harrington approaching, his face darkening as he recognized Marcus. Mr. Montgomery, Harrington interrupted smoothly. I see you've met one of our students. If you're interested in urban power grid solutions, you really must see what our official innovation competition team has developed. Montgomery turned. Richard, good to see you. Yes, I was just telling Mr. Johnson how impressed I am with his approach. Harrington's smile faltered. Johnson? But he's not on the competition team. No, he isn't, Dr. Wells interjected. Which makes his independent work all the more remarkable. Dean Foster, who had followed Harrington over, examined Marcus's display with growing interest. This is excellent work. Why isn't he on the team, Richard? Harrington's face tightened. Mr. Johnson has attendance issues that made him unsuitable for team projects. Attendance issues? Montgomery repeated. Young man, is this true? Marcus swallowed hard. I've been late to Professor Harrington's class several times, sir. I work nights at a warehouse, and sometimes my shift runs over or my car breaks down. Works nights? Dean Foster echoed, turning to Harrington. You were aware of this? Students' personal choices are not my concern, Harrington said stiffly. Standards must be maintained. Standards, Montgomery repeated thoughtfully. Tell me, Richard, does your competition team's solution address power distribution in low-income neighborhoods with aging infrastructure? Harrington hesitated. We focused on efficiency in modern grid systems. I see. Montgomery turned back to Marcus. And you developed this solution independently, while working 3 jobs and maintaining a, he glanced at Dr. Wells. 3.9 GPA, she supplied. The atrium had grown quiet, other attendees sensing the tension and drifting closer. 3 jobs? Dean Foster asked, looking directly at Marcus. Why 3? Dean Foster's office was imposingly formal, with awards and degrees lining the walls and a massive desk that seemed designed to intimidate. Marcus sat uncomfortably in one of the leather chairs, acutely aware of his worn jeans and the coffee stain on his shirt from his morning shift. Professor Harrington sat rigidly in the adjacent chair, his expression stormy. Dr. Wells completed the triangle, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. Mr. Johnson, Dean Foster began, settling behind his desk. I want to understand your situation clearly. You're currently employed at 3 separate jobs while maintaining a full course load. Yes, sir, Marcus replied. I work mornings at the Busy Bean Cafe, evenings at the campus library, and overnight shifts at the UPS warehouse 3 times a week. And when do you sleep? The dean asked, echoing Dr. Wells's earlier question. When I can, Marcus answered honestly. 4 hours most nights. And this schedule is necessary because my scholarship covers most of my tuition, but not housing, books, or living expenses. I also send money home to my mother and sister in Chicago when I can. My sister has medical issues. The dean nodded thoughtfully before turning to Professor Harrington. And you were unaware of these circumstances? A student's personal choices are not my concern, Harrington repeated stiffly. Many students work part-time. It doesn't entitle them to special treatment. 3 jobs is hardly part-time, Richard, Dr. Wells interjected. And despite this schedule, Mr. Johnson has maintained the highest grades in your class. His written work is satisfactory, Harrington conceded. But engineering isn't just about solving problems on paper. Punctuality, reliability, professionalism, these are essential qualities I'm trying to instill. By kicking him out of class? Dr. Wells asked pointedly. By maintaining standards, Harrington insisted. Rules apply to everyone, regardless of their background. Something in his tone made Dean Foster's eyes narrow. Their background? What exactly do you mean by that, Professor? Harrington shifted uncomfortably. Simply that standards must be consistent for all students, regardless of their circumstances. That's not what you implied in class, Marcus said quietly. You suggested the admissions department prioritized demographics over merit. The dean's eyebrows shot up. Is this true, Professor Harrington? My comments were taken out of context, Harrington said, his face flushing. I merely meant, I know exactly what you meant, Dr. Wells cut in. And it wasn't the first time. I've received multiple complaints about similar comments from your students over the past 2 semesters. Complaints? Harrington looked genuinely surprised. Why wasn't I informed? The students requested anonymity, Dr. Wells replied. They feared retaliation. Particularly the scholarship students. Dean Foster leaned forward, his expression grave. Richard, you know that discrimination of any kind violates university policy. "This is absurd," Harrington protested. "I judge students solely on their merit." "Do you?" Dr. Wells challenged. "Then explain why Mr. Johnson, with perfect scores on your assignments and exams, was excluded from the innovation competition team in favor of students with significantly lower academic performance." Team selection considers multiple factors, such as family connections to university donors. Dr. Wells suggested. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at his hands, uncomfortable with the confrontation happening around him. Dean Foster broke the silence. "Mr. Johnson, I owe you an apology on behalf of this institution. You've demonstrated exceptional dedication and ability under circumstances that would break most students." He turned to Harrington. "Professor, we'll continue this discussion privately. For now, I want to be clear, Mr. Johnson will be added to the innovation competition team immediately. Furthermore, any attendance issues related to his work schedule will be accommodated." "Dean Foster," Marcus began, "I don't want special." "This isn't special treatment," the dean interrupted firmly. "This is correcting an injustice." Harrington's face had gone pale. "You can't seriously be suggesting I change my classroom policies for one student." "I'm not suggesting it," Dean Foster replied coldly. "I'm requiring it. And not just for one student, but for any student facing similar circumstances." He turned back to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, Dr. Wells tells me you've applied for the Montgomery Scholarship. The committee will make its official decision next week, but I can tell you that Mr. Montgomery was extremely impressed by your work yesterday." For the first time that day, hope flickered in Marcus's chest. "Thank you, sir. In the meantime," the dean continued, "I'd like you to meet with our financial aid office this afternoon. There are emergency funds available for students in your situation that might allow you to reduce your work hours immediately." As the meeting concluded, Harrington stormed out without another word. Dr. Wells gave Marcus an encouraging smile as he rose to leave. "Mr. Johnson," Dean Foster called as Marcus reached the door. "One more thing. Those 3 jobs, how have they affected your education?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "They've made it harder in some ways, sir. But they've also taught me to value every minute, to work efficiently, to solve problems with limited resources." He paused. "I think they've made me a better engineer." The dean nodded slowly. "I believe they have. But no student should have to work themselves to exhaustion to earn an education." Walking across campus toward the financial aid office, Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time since arriving at Westridge, he wasn't fighting the battle alone. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "What happened?" "Things are changing," he replied. "For the better." 6 months later, Marcus stood at the podium in the same auditorium where Dean Foster had announced the innovation competition. Now, he was addressing the incoming freshman class during orientation. "When I started at Westridge, I was working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night," he told the rapt audience. "I thought that was just what it took, that success required suffering in silence." In the front row, Dr. Wells nodded encouragingly. Beside her sat Dean Foster and James Montgomery himself. "I was wrong," Marcus continued. "Education shouldn't be a test of endurance. It should be accessible to anyone with the talent and determination to pursue it, regardless of their background or economic circumstances." The Montgomery Scholarship had transformed Marcus's life. The full tuition, housing stipend, and living allowance meant he now worked just one job, as a research assistant in Dr. Wells's lab. He still sent money home to his mother and Tiana, whose health had stabilized with proper medical care. The Westridge Innovation Team, which I'm proud to lead this year, just took first place at the national competition, Marcus announced to thunderous applause. "Our power grid optimization system will be implemented in 3 underserved communities next year, including the Chicago neighborhood where I grew up." What he didn't mention was that Professor Harrington was no longer supervising the team. After the confrontation in Dean Foster's office, a university investigation had uncovered a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Harrington hadn't been fired, tenure made that nearly impossible, but he'd been removed from leadership positions and required to complete extensive sensitivity training. More importantly, the university had established the Working Student Support Program, providing emergency funds, flexible class scheduling, and mentorship for students juggling employment and education. As Marcus concluded his speech, he spotted Zoe in the audience, giving him a thumbs up. She'd been right all along. Nobody was untouchable when their actions violated the core values of fairness and equal opportunity. After the orientation, Marcus's mother and Tiana surprised him, having driven in from Chicago for the weekend. "My college boy," his mother said proudly, embracing him. "Look at you now." Tiana, healthy and vibrant, hugged him next. "The engineering genius," she teased. "Mom cried through your whole speech." "Did not," their mother protested, wiping her eyes. As they walked across the campus that had once felt so unwelcoming, Marcus reflected on his journey. The hardship hadn't disappeared overnight. The prejudice hadn't magically vanished. But something fundamental had changed. He was no longer fighting alone. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Wells. "Montgomery wants to expand the scholarship program next year. He's asking for your input on selection criteria." Marcus smiled. The system was slowly changing, opening doors that had once been firmly closed. And he was now in a position to help others like himself, brilliant, determined students who just needed a fair chance. That evening, as Marcus showed his family around campus, a freshman stopped him outside the engineering building. "Excuse me," the young woman said hesitantly. "You're Marcus Johnson, right? I saw your speech today. I'm working 2 jobs to pay for school, and I was thinking of dropping out, but after hearing your story." She paused. "I'm going to stay." "What's your major?" Marcus asked. "Engineering," she replied. "But everyone says it's the hardest program." Marcus smiled. "It is hard. But you're not alone anymore. Let me tell you about some resources that might help." As they talked, Marcus thought about how far he'd come. From being kicked out of class to changing university policy. From working 3 jobs to leading the innovation team. From suffering in silence to speaking out for others. Some battles were worth fighting, especially the ones that opened doors for those who would follow. Dear friend, every day, talented students like Marcus struggle silently to balance education and financial survival. Their stories often go untold, their brilliance overshadowed by circumstances beyond their control. By sharing this story, we shine a light on the resilience of these students and the systemic barriers they face. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that challenge perspectives and inspire change. Together, we can create educational environments where merit and determination, not privilege, determine success.